Y'all tripping. It's not even that serious. Hello, good morning. My name is Jessamyn. Let me make sure that I have even figured out how to use this technology correctly. All right. Let's just take a moment. There we are. All right. So, first of all, thanks for deciding to be late to work for me today. I'm like really impressed by this. I don't know if you were actually like, I'm not trying to go there anyway, so it's fine. And then also, shout out to all the sponsors and to the Creative Mornings team for having me here, but also like shameless plug for Compost Now. I didn't know they were involved. I've been using Compost Now for years. It's lit if you're not already doing it. Help save the planet one compost bucket at a time. Okay, there was no payment or organization of that at all. Okay, I'm a yoga teacher, but when I tell people that, they usually kind of give me a look like, does she know what yoga is? Because like, I've heard about it and it's pretty much just white people, like white women that do that. So, and more specifically, like slender white women. And even more specifically than that, in America, it's a lot of like slender, traditionally educated, cisgender, like there's just a very specific lane that we think of when we think of a yoga teacher. And even in saying that I'm a yoga teacher, that's not really my full job. I am a writer, I'm an author, I am a podcaster, I have a show on Stitcher Premium. I am I guess the term is social media influencer. I'm a creative, I'm an entrepreneur, but so much of what I do on a day-to-day basis wouldn't have happened if I had not truly tuned into who I am as a person. And I think that a lot of times when we talk about, you know, making a point in this world and like really making an impact and having a career of purpose, that it's coming from this space of outside of ourselves. We're not necessarily looking within ourselves to do that. So that a lot of times the shit that we end up doing for money makes us unhappy, or it's not coming from a place of love. It's not even coming from a place of contentment within the self. But I mean, to be completely honest with y'all, this was not a goal of mine. I didn't think, like, wake up one day, think, man, yoga would be such a great thing to start doing. And then, maybe one day I could start teaching it. That was not it at all. So I was in graduate school and I was going through a period in my life that, honestly, if you've been to graduate school, you've probably had this experience. It was basically, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I hate my life. What's going on? And it was such a basic and average time that pretty much comes for every grad student that in Everybody Yoga, my book, I didn't even talk about it in depth because I was like, I mean, whatever, y'all know what's good. So one of my classmates was practicing Bikram yoga at the time, and she was like, oh my God, Jessamyn, you should go to this Bikram class with me. You're gonna love it. It's gonna change your whole life. I don't know if any of y'all have ever tried Bikram yoga, just as like a explanatory comma. It's a style of hot yoga practiced in a room that's between 100 and 104 degrees, pretty much depending on how sadistic the teacher is. And it's the same 26 postures 2 times over a 90-minute period. This was not the first time that I'd heard of Bikram. When I was in high school, my aunt was obsessed with this. Bikram tends to get kind of like a cult-like following, and I say that with no shade. This is no shade on cults. We could have a whole separate conversation about Bikram yoga in general, and if you want to do that, like, find me for a beer in Durham, we can get into it. But just on the surface, it's like you drink the Kool-Aid, you're obsessed. And my aunt was obsessed the summer I turned 16. She was like, Jessamyn, come to this yoga class, it's gonna change your life, it's gonna be great. And I was like, I mean, I'm fat, I'm 16, I got nothing better to do than go to this hot yoga class with you, so why not? And so I went, and I hated it. It was like, even now, having done that practice so many times since then, I still think that's one of the worst experiences of my life. It's like, you walk into this room that is hot in a way that honestly, like, pampered Americans really do not have a concept of. And so you go into the room, there's carpeting everywhere. And so when you sweat that much, like hundreds of people sweating for years, that's a smell that is just so specific, dude. So like you walk in, it's hot as hell, it reeks. And you're immediately sweating from every part of your body. Like I'm sweating from my elbow creases, the backs of my knees, my eyebrows. Like I didn't even know that you sweat from your eyebrows. I did not know that was a thing. And this is before we've actually done anything. This is just walking into the room. So after about a third of the class, I was like, I'm good. That's sufficient. I don't need to do this anymore. And they tell you not to walk out of a class, out of a Beak Room studio, and I'm like, these people don't know me. I cannot do this. This is gonna be my last day. But I walked out of the room. I felt amazing because there was air conditioning. And then when I walked back in, I learned why you're not supposed to do that, because the temperature shift in your body is so extreme that it has all kinds of reactions. For me, it was nausea. And I walked out again and I was like, I'm never doing this again. This is not for me. So cut back to grad school. Friend one is like, oh my God, come try this class. And I was like, you are on one. I'm not doing that. It's not for me. I've already tried it. And I suspect that there's at least one other person in this room who has tried yoga before, heard that there was gonna be a yoga teacher talking and was like, I don't know why she's so amped about yoga because it's really not that cool. I did it that one time and it was terrible. I feel you. Whoever you are, kindred spirit. Yes, see, that's right. So if that's you, I got you. But the thing is, I went back, she convinced me because they had a Groupon pass, so I was like, what's the worst that could happen? You go one time, it's not that big of a deal. And I loved it. Everything was exactly the same. It was still hot as hell, the posture seemed completely impossible for me to even wrap my mind around. It was a very emotionally confusing experience. But what I didn't realize, in my day-to-day life, I really was not pushing myself outside of my comfort zone at all. I was not pushing myself to look beyond or to try new things. I, like most people, set boundaries for myself, determined by what I've done in the past and what I believe I'm capable of, and then never step outside of those boundaries. Am fearful of stepping outside of those boundaries. And when you're in a yoga class, any kind of class, you have to step beyond your boundaries. You have to get beyond the walls that we make. And that experience was so motivating for me, not just in the yoga studio, but in every other part of my life. And it really initiated this massive shift in my life in which I dropped out of graduate school, moved to Durham, and basically started stumbling down a path of complete confusion until I got to where I am right now. Now, practicing yoga is one thing, but traveling around the world and writing books and doing all this shit, it's really different. So I think the natural question next is like, so how did that happen? Like, how did you actually transition into a career of this? Again, I had no interest in teaching yoga. Like, I had no interest in practicing yoga, and teaching it was so confusing to me. I was like, there are literally thousands of yoga teachers. Why do I need to be a yoga teacher? It just was not something that I thought was for me. And I started posting photographs of my yoga practice on social media way before. Now, like, everybody is on social media. And if you're a yoga teacher in America especially, and you want to teach regularly, it's almost imperative that you have some kind of social media presence. But 5 years ago, that was not the case at all. And I got on Instagram like pretty much when it first came out, and I was just trying to connect with other yoga practitioners. I wanted to be able to feel like I was a part of a community and also just get feedback about my postural practice. One of the reasons that people stop practicing yoga at home, and if anyone has ever tried to practice yoga at home, I may be speaking to you. One of the reasons is because it's kind of isolating and you don't have a teacher that's there telling you what to do. So the photographs were an opportunity for me to just like watch my practice over time and to have this really beautiful community connection. But pretty quickly, the response that I got from people was not really like feedback about my practice. It was predominantly people being like, I didn't know fat people could do yoga, oh my God. And I was just like, why do you think fat people can't do yoga? Fat people do all kinds of stuff all the time. Like, I'm not even the first fat Black person to put pictures of themselves practicing yoga on the internet. And it became really clear that we have a massive visibility issue, that it's less about who's actually living this practice and more about who the media thinks they can sell shit to. So, I posted with a lot of frequency, received a lot of feedback from people like, can you come teach me? I'm in Sweden, I'm in Amsterdam, I'm in Buenos Aires, like wherever, can you come there? And I would recommend other teachers, I would recommend online platforms. I was like, you don't need for me to come teach you. There's no reason for this. Plus, I couldn't afford to go to a yoga teacher training. Are you kidding me? I dropped out of graduate school. If you've ever done this before, it is a horrible financial decision. You will be paying for a degree that you've not finished. So I'm living and working in Durham, 2 jobs, trying to honestly just have a place to live indoors. I was not trying to build this teaching career or anything, but it just became very apparent that I needed to take a step in that direction. And I just didn't have the money, though, ultimately, and so much of our lives come down to that. And one day I was talking to my father, okay, sidebar. By this point, I'd had a fair amount of press attention, and my father has not cared about any of this at all. Like, my dad does not care about the internet, he doesn't care about social media, he doesn't even really care about press or anything like that. He cares about, why did you drop out of graduate school? And he was like on that. It was every month, it's like, when are you going back? What's going on with this? And one day we were talking and he was like, so Jessamyn, what's going on with this yoga thing? Your mom told me about, this magazine thing. What's going on with this? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really have, maybe I'll be a teacher. I don't know. I don't have the money for it. And he was like, well, how much money does it cost? And I was like, it's $3,000. And he was like, well, what if we could help you find that money? What would that make you go? Because it seems like you need to go do this. And I was like, this is the universe talking, because if this dude is saying that I need to do it, this is bigger than me. And it was no small thing for me to go away. I mean, was working 2 jobs, had to quit one of them, had to get someone to fill in for me at the other. But even going into training, I wasn't thinking that I would teach full time. I was just like, I'll go to training, I'll learn about alignment and yoga lineage and history, and then that may prepare me to teach 1 or 2 classes every once in a while. What I didn't realize is that every human being is dealing with so much emotional distress at all times. Every single one of us is carrying a story that is layered and has wounds that are often gaping open. And yoga as a practice allows us to be able to accept those wounds, to be able to see and love the trauma, to be able to sit in a space of compassion within the self so that we can then reflect that compassion to others. This is maybe a little bit bigger than just like, I'm gonna do this yoga pose on a beach. This is really speaking to the core of who we are as human beings, and then how we can find a sense of compassion within ourselves and reflect it out to others so that we can live in a more compassionate world. So when we're walking and talking about that, it's imperative that there be lots of yoga teachers. In fact, truly, that all of us should be teachers, so that every person who speaks whatever language, whether that's like a language in the way that we typically think of speaking, or if it's a emotional language, if it's a spiritual language, that everyone can find a teacher that can speak to them. And I realized that as much as I didn't really care about teaching yoga. It wasn't something that was one of my career goals that I wrote down on like the Common App or whatever. It was not something that I had thought would be a good motivator. I realized that this is something that I need to do regardless of whether or not it's something that I think I should do. When I left training, I was literally like, okay, so where do y'all want me to teach? Y'all been saying you want me to teach, what's up? And I literally have a spreadsheet that is essentially every single place in the world. And my way of moving forward is just, I'm going to try to reach every student who's tried to ask me to teach them. And when I no longer need to do that, and there's no longer people asking me to teach them, then I won't anymore. And for me, that intention of moving with what is being asked of me and what the universe is asking has been very, very helpful. And I know that it can seem like, well, what the fuck? Like, how are you supposed to come to a conclusion like that? That's so esoteric and vague, and like, it's not something that easily translates to a paycheck. But for me, that kind of clarification has been transformative in my life. Now, working within the modern yoga world is an interesting experience because there's definitely, I call it the yoga industrial complex. It is much bigger than this search for compassion that I've been talking about. It's a money-making machine. And for me, it's always coming down to how can I keep my teaching practice authentic? How can I stay authentic while still being in the belly of this beast? And I'm not gonna lie to you, this is not the easiest part of my life. I would say this is one of the most complicated parts because we live in a society where mimicking one another is encouraged. You're not encouraged to look for authenticity, to seek intention or anything like that. People want you to copy whoever did it the best, and then that's it. There's no focus on anything else. And that is, nowhere is that more true than in the modern yoga world. There is so much copying one another and trying to fit into boxes that were created by other people. And for me, it just always comes down to one thing: be yourself, no matter what. No matter what. Even if everybody fucking hates you, even if no one gets it, even if you are walking alone with no one, it is so much better to just be yourself and to set intention to find out who that person is and to stick to that truth, even if it is frightening, because I guarantee that it will be, that's the only way to move forward. I also think that so this has a lot to do with consumerism, and again, if you want to talk about this in more depth, then we can get a beer later and talk about it. But if you really think about it, like, listening to yourself is not encouraged in our society. We're encouraged to listen to every source outside of ourselves. That, in fact, we should downgrade the importance of what's going on within ourselves to the point where we can't even hear what's happening within ourselves. And I know that when you say, like, be yourself, it sounds like kind of after school specialish, and like, it's like, yeah, that's really easy. It's hard as fuck, dude. And it is a daily thing. And it's more than a daily thing, it's a moment by moment thing. Always checking in, always saying, is my answer coming from inside, or is this a reflection of what I think I'm seeing outside? It means having really uncomfortable interactions, not with strangers, but with yourself. I, as a fat-bodied person, this is just like a micro example, have had to constantly check myself in terms of the way that I speak about myself, the things that I think about myself. I have a feeling that I'm not the only person in this room who struggles with that. The need to be, to look a certain way for others. And I find that when I'm really leaning into what's called body positivity, that what that actually looks like for me is this, Oh God, just like really embarrassing and intense therapy moments in the middle of like Whole Foods, dude. It's like, okay, the example that I always give is when I don't know about y'all, but when I exercise a lot, I like to eat a lot afterwards because I'm fucking hungry, right? So roll up to Whole Foods, hot bar, and I'm just like loading up my food, getting food on the plate. And as I'm putting on, my macaroni and cheese or whatever, I look over and I see this person looking over at my plate. And then the kid inside of me who has been struggling since she came out the womb is immediately like, oh my God, maybe I should have gotten more salad. Now this person knows that I like a lot of macaroni and cheese. Maybe I don't need a lot of macaroni and cheese. Maybe I should get more salad. I don't know. And it's literally me stopping myself in the middle of Whole Foods and being like, do you want macaroni and cheese? Because if you don't get it. But if you do, you should get it. And if you think that you don't want the macaroni and cheese, where is that coming from? Is that you? Are you not really hungry? Or is that you think that this person over here thinks you shouldn't have macaroni and cheese? Because they're probably not even looking at your macaroni and cheese, actually. They're probably thinking about something completely different. It's really, you know what's good, that person. But it's having these really, I think so often we want to look for the answer outside of ourselves. We hope that maybe we can buy something or someone will tell us something that is going to be the magic words that we need to hear in order to be self-satisfied. But all of that is going to come from within ourselves. And it all starts with setting the intention to be ourselves, no matter what, no matter come what may. Conformity feels so safe. It's so comforting. And honestly, it's probably the conformity of our ancestors that has allowed some of us to even be here if we're really keeping it real. But the real magic of life does not happen when you're conforming. It doesn't happen whenever you're like trying to stand next to somebody else so that you can blend in, or when you're asking your friends how you look instead of thinking about how you feel. It comes whenever you say, fuck it, I'm standing my truth, even if my truth is scary. And that may be, I want to encourage fear to a certain extent that it creates space for us to avoid conformity. And I think that, whatever, okay. I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I'm just gonna pull it back. Now, in my mind, this is a lot like setting a code of ethics or like a sort of a standard set of rules. And so I've been thinking of it as the oath of authenticity, that for myself, I'm gonna have this oath. I say it every day, and that if I can hold true to that oath, to this code, then I'll be on the right track. Listen to your instincts, go with your gut. I think sometimes because logic is, especially, I don't know what y'all do for work, but sometimes in your professional life, logic is kind of imperative. But at the end of the day, you can use logic and you can use reason, but it's just gonna come down to your gut. And just go with it and go with your instincts. And even when it seems scary or frightening, just go with it. Avoid automatically turning to others for input. This is something that in my professional life has been so helpful, but is also so scary. I was definitely raised, and I don't know about y'all, but I would assume that at least a couple other people have been. I was raised to ask other people for their opinions, to be like, especially if you have a new idea, it's like, oh, maybe I'll start doing this. What do you think about it? And even if the person says something positive, you're automatically taking on their energy as well, so that you almost lose that inner compass of what do I think or what do I want? And honestly, if I had listened to the opinions of other people, I promise you I would not be standing here right now. And if I had turned to other people, I wouldn't even have yoga photos. I remember when I first started taking photos of my practice, I asked my partner, I was like, yeah, I think I want to watch my progress, so can you take pictures of me? And my partner was like, no, I'm not taking pictures of you. And if I had just gone with that, they were like, that's a dumb idea, whatever, this is, Y'all know what happens when you are in relationships with people. Anyway, they were very discouraging. And if I had stayed with that, which at the time I really thought that I should, I valued and respected the opinion of this person, and I felt like, you know, if they're not into it, then how could it be a worthwhile idea? Just because other people aren't into it doesn't mean it's not dope. A lot of times people don't even understand new ideas because they're new ideas. And if you love and believe in something and it makes you happy and it fulfills you, you can't think about forever. It doesn't matter how long you'll be doing it or if you'll always feel that way. Just go for it. Even if everyone around you thinks what you're doing is weird and stupid. Stay in your lane. This is something, oh my God. So I don't know if y'all have heard of the internet. I've been talking about it a lot, but especially social media creates this feeling of like needing to compete with one another, needing to compare yourself against other people, thinking that, you know, what somebody else is doing needs to be the barometer for what you're gonna do. And that is so toxic to the nature of creativity. I can't even, it's like, and for me, it's so helpful to remember, just get in your lane. Stay in your lane. Your lane can go all over the place. It can twist and wind and move and grow and maybe become like a double lane. There's all kinds of shit that can happen with your lane, but don't get in somebody else's lane. Don't even look over at somebody else's lane. Because the racehorse, as it goes down the track, the racehorse that falls is the racehorse that looks to the left or to the right. If you look straight ahead and you look down your lane, you will always be where you need to be. And again, with things that sound easy but are actually really, really difficult, that staying in the lane is so hard, but I just think it's crucial. Reach for the stars, even if they seem far away. I don't know about you, but I have a habit of underestimating myself, especially as a Black queer femme growing up in a world that, you know, the white supremacist capitalist world does not want me to be there. Like it profits with me feeling like I'm not good enough. And it's so easy to be like, that's too far away, or that's out of reach. And I mean, again, I don't know about y'all, but I had a lot of teachers who encouraged me in that way too, who they would sort of set boundaries for themselves. They determined that certain things were too far away, and so they told me that it was too far away. And then that feeling of not being able to reach for the stars becomes so key to who we are that we don't even look beyond. We don't say, what if? We don't jump, we don't leap. And to just say, you know, I'm just gonna reach. I'm gonna reach, and maybe I'll touch it. I'm not gonna worry about whether or not it's gonna happen. Who cares if it's not gonna happen? All kinds of stuff is not gonna happen. And honestly, this video game, you don't even know how long it's gonna last, so you might as well just reach, because you might touch a star. You might touch the moon, but there's no way to even get there if you don't try. Establishing personal introspection practices, okay, so everything that I've said sounds like well and good, but then I think, how did I really get to these feelings? And it's very helpful that I am coming from a yoga practice because it allows for the introspection to come to these conclusions. But if you're not doing those kind of grounding practices, it might be kind of hard to take that leap. So I'm not even saying that you need to go out and get a yoga mat or start meditating or doing anything like that. There's so many ways to look within the self, find one, and do it regularly. And that kind of constant grounding, it allows you, whenever shit is shaking up and moving around. And it's funny that as time has gone on and as my career has changed and grown, I have had even more situations where it's imperative to be doing these practices. And if you're not coming back to it on a regular basis, there's no way to actually see who you are. You'll forget. You'll start thinking that the mask that you put on to go to work or to be around friends or family, or to, you know, just survive, that you start thinking that that mask is your face. So in order to take the mask off, in order to really see who you are, it is very important to set those practices for the self. So I can talk forever, and honestly, like, I'm kind of good on listening to me, but I wonder if y'all have any questions about anything that I either did talk about or didn't talk about, or something that came up for you. I'm gonna do a little shimmy shake until that happens. Here we go. I'm gonna take my skirt off of my heel also. Don't be afraid. Oh, I'm sorry, hello.
One of the things you talk about in the book that I really like is about how many of the good moments in your life have come to you by being alone on the mat. Has that gotten easier?
Has the experience of having the moments alone gotten easier for me?
Or just being alone in the mat, has that
Oh.
gotten easier? You sort of talk about how
Yeah.
you had to force yourself, it was pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that being alone is something that we're not really encouraged to do. I think that we're like taught that being even in a pair, or seeing the roles that we play for other people, using that as a comfort tactic, is better than standing alone. And for me, the process of being alone has been very, very difficult and very challenging. And I think for some people, it's so challenging that they never practice yoga alone, that you always keep practicing in a studio environment or around other people, because it's easier to define yourself in that way. But I've gotten to a place where I would prefer to not be in a group environment and prefer to be alone, because the lessons that I've learned being by myself are on a completely different level than the lessons that are learned around other people. And I also have begun to really require that time, and to think that I don't even know how to be around other people without taking that time. And it's absolutely 100% different than how I was when I began this practice. And so I guess, like, just to answer succinctly, yes, but it is a process that changes and morphs every day. I hope that answered your question. Dope. Hello, white shirt, second row. Hey.
What platform, online or otherwise, are you recommending? Because there's a lot out there.
Yes.
I've personally taken a look at. I can't decide until I go through it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I was also really apprehensive about practicing at home, because I wanted that kind of guidance that you have in a studio, but I had taken like video classes in the past and not had any success with it at all. So I was really anti-online yoga. But the first platform that I tried is the platform that I still use to this day. It's called Yoga Glow, glow without a W at the end. It is, I mean, I've been subscribing for so many years, and it's because the teachers are, I mean, they are first-class, world-renowned teachers who really create an environment that feels like you're in the room with them, but you're not. And it has so many different styles of yoga, so many different kinds of meditation. There's non-physical or meditative practice. There's just scholarly classes. It's a really beautiful platform that, one of my issues with studio culture is that it requires money in a way that is very, it's not accessible to everybody, so that for a lot of people, I mean, you can't just drop like $20 a week, or if you go multiple times a week, it's like hundreds of dollars a month. I mean, practicing yoga in studios can get outrageous. And if you pay something like, I think Yoga Glow is $18 a month or something like that. It's so much more affordable. I used to teach classes on a website called Cody app, which is now called Allo Moves, but I actually have an app that's going to launch at the start of next year. It's the Everybody Yoga with Jessamyn app, and it's going to have all of my online classes and all sorts of content that people can access as well. So if you wanted to practice with me specifically, that would be the way to do it. But if you just want to get into yoga and you're like, what? There's a million sites out here, I don't know which one to pick, Yoga Glow is the one that I would pick. No problem. Okay, hello. Hey.
First, I want to just thank you. And I'm an emotional person, so I might cry.
I'm an emotional person, so I'm gonna look over here. Like, you know, like how dogs will be like when they're like, I don't know. Hey.
I started following you several years ago because we have a mutual friend, Janice Smith.
Oh yes.
I
Hey.
was talking to Janice about how I could put myself into my business, my face into my business. But I was really feeling like that pressure of being a curvy black girl. Everything you see on Instagram is highly contoured blonde girl.
Oh yes.
That wears size 4.
Oh yes.
And so I was like, Janice, I don't know. And she said, you need to follow this person. And so I started following, and for me, that was a game changer. And so I want to thank you for your vulnerability and for putting yourself out there, because for me and my business, that was monumental.
God damn. Wow. That wasn't a question. No, thank you.
All the time, because I feel like if I hadn't known her, I was complaining that day. And I hate to complain, but she was like, Amber, I have the answer. And I was like, please tell me. And she said, you just need to follow Jessica, because she will help you just know the way. And it has. So today, like Friday, I'm doing a Friday introduction, and I'm putting a picture of myself in a bathing suit.
Yes, yes, yes. Can I just say one thing? So I feel like we're all like, well, shit, I don't look like this person, so should I even do it, or is it enough? And I've had that feeling of like, my thing doesn't look like this person, so like, should I do it? And it's like, that's the reason to do it, because it doesn't look like, but it's so hard.
Like, I'm happy in my skin.
Right.
But like, it was like, are people going to accept? Like, people are going to
Right.
say, how dare she be happy with a fat body?
Oh, so much to say, dude. And that, okay, because that's really the crux of it, right? It's this fear of like, what is somebody else going to say about me? And then the fact that somebody is going to say something negative. And the question that I come to now is like, where is their negativity coming from? If you bought the pig and somebody told you years ago, you're supposed to look like this one way, and you bought the pig, you said, okay, that's how life is supposed to be. And then you see someone who does the exact opposite of that and is happy and has the nerve to like think that they can show themselves to other people, there's no way that you're not gonna have a negative reaction. And so often now, whenever I see people being openly hateful, like, ew, that's disgusting, or like, whale on the beach, or whatever, like dumb, outdated, because also people who are mean are usually not that creative, so it's like, okay, somebody when I was in 8th grade said that, whatever. But whenever I hear comments like that now, I'm just like, you must be so sad. This person is fundamentally sad, because usually if you're happy, you don't care. Like, how many things you see on the internet that you don't like, that you don't comment on, because who cares? Like, it's not that big of a deal. And whenever people are like wrapped up and so mad, and I still get so many people who are just like saying awful things to me, like it's like they feel as though they deserve to be able to say those things. And it just brings out the compassion, because I'm like, dude, I don't even know what's going on in your life. Like, maybe you work at a job that you hate, maybe you have people in your life who are horrible to you every single day, and then you get on the internet and this is the one way that you can find your source of strength. And I can't get emotionally wrapped up in that conversation that somebody else needs to have with themselves. And it's so hard to remember that though, because people be trying. Like one time, I don't mean to get like too far off, but this was in the heat of my book tour last year, and it was like I'm in a different place every single day, and I'm doing all of this press, and I was just so stressed out and overwhelmed and like clinging onto my practice for dear life. And I remember one day I had like run into Reagan Airport, which if you've ever been to that airport is weirdly annoying. I don't know if anybody is familiar with this, but I run in, I'm like, oh, about to miss the flight, but it's still there, and I'm like, oh God, I can breathe. And I look down at my phone, and this bitch was trying me on Instagram. I don't even remember now what it said, but she had said something that was just like so out of pocket. And usually my response is like, I'm not going to say anything to this person, but wow, let me send them some love. Let me see what I can do. But I was like, she tried it. And so I was like screenshotting and putting in all these comments on my Instagram story. I was like, and then this, and then this. And then I went back and immediately just deleted it because I was like, whatever, that's not. But so I say that to say like, I'm no angel. Like I definitely, you can still get a rise out of me for sure. But so much of that negativity is coming from a seat of deep, deep, deep insecurity for other people. And I feel like in a lot of ways, it's encouraging to just keep doing it, Anyway, I feel like maybe you were gonna ask a question. Hey.
The question is, first, after you answer my question, I'll look at like you. The second
Please.
question is, what was that thing that happened somewhere in your brain between when you left grad school and when your dad said, yes, we're going to help you do this thing, that really, there's a pushing force somewhere that makes you not say like, yeah, maybe I should just do what everybody else in this office job, in this regular life. What was that pushing force for you that really said like, no, that's not really what I want to do? Or not really what I want to do, that's not what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was really like the universe pushed me because I was working in a restaurant and I was very much interested in working with food. And that was like, I still am interested in doing that. And I was like really trying to walk down that road. But I just had so many people that were like, I've never seen a fat Black person do blank, or like and even more than that, it was people who were like, I thought I couldn't do this until I saw you. And now you've changed. And it's not even just people being like, oh, I want to try yoga. It was just like people being like, I'm going to do something that I thought I could not do. Because it is an epidemic, the number of people who think that they can't do stuff. And I feel like for me, that's a reason to keep pushing forward. That's a reason to say like, okay, yeah, I have these other goals and there are things that I maybe would like to do with my time, but clearly this is something that needs to happen. And I wouldn't have had that motivator had I not just put myself out there. And I was very insecure putting myself out there. Like I definitely was not like, yeah, this will be a great idea. When I would take my yoga photos in the beginning, I would take them at the most random angles because I thought that I didn't want to see my stomach all the way or I didn't want to see my arms. But it wasn't until I really started taking in my full self and really trying to understand myself and understand the origin of my self-hate that I realized like, wow, this is something that's happening for other people as well. And I think that sometimes we try to figure out what the destination is going to be before we actually have the journey, but that the journey determines what the destination is. And so for me, it's that like, I'm gonna figure myself out. And then in the process of figuring myself out, seeing that, wow, there's a lot of other people that need to figure themselves out too. To the point where as I'm teaching, I feel like, okay, I just want to encourage other people to be themselves. Like, I'm not trying to get people to practice yoga the way that I practice yoga. I don't care if you ever go to a yoga class. I don't care if it's like you ever practice with me or anything. But everybody finding out that it's okay to be themselves, that's worthwhile. And that's something that can really resonate. Did that get close to answering your question? So, cool. Thank you. Am I at time? Thank y'all. Peace out. Have a good day. Y'all tripping.